Previously on Chaos Head Noah. He was a scientist at Nozomi Technology, a follower of the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light, the man at the center of Nozomi's strictly confidential Project Noah, and the man that had deciphered FUN squared 10 times INT squared 40 equals IR2. He had offered his wife on the verge of childbirth as a test subject for the experiment. While that had been an instruction from the founder that he revered, it had been just as much his own suggestion, all to ensure the success of the experiment. It was christened the Mana Experiment. After the codename given to their second daughter. His eldest daughter of 15 was placed in a cosmic church of the Divine Light institution, all while he observed his confined wife and infant child for 24 hours a day. His wife had been led to believe that the place she resided in was a company house, but in reality it was a test site that Nozomi Technology had prepared. A site containing the Noah 2 prototype he was developing. Mind reading, visual projection, and control over the 5 senses. In order to research the effects of such practices, he locked his wife and daughter Mana in the site as test subjects. The daughter cried and screamed as she watched her mother's horrific end from beyond the one-way mirror. His daughter was then taken away by 2 researchers, with one taking hold of each arm. He was not even granted the opportunity to pursue his only remaining relative. He blamed himself for everything, believing he had reaped what he himself had sowed. Well, I can't really disagree with you there, buddy. Regardless of his reasons, when he had resolved to continue the experiment 2 years ago, it had been obvious how things would end. Mere days after bearing witness to his wife's death, he vanished. And now, nary a soul knew of his current whereabouts.
あなたに目覚めてほしくないの。普通の生活を送ってほしかった。
Didn't want me to awaken? Like, as a Gigalomaniac? Rimi knew more about me than I did.
一体君は何者なの？
私は
Rimi hesitated a little.
私はタクの友達だって思ってる。友達でいたいな。
In other words, she was telling me to stop pushing. But there's no way I could stop there.
僕はギガロマニアックスなの。
そうとも言えるし、違うとも言える。
Ah, so I'm a Schrodinger's Gigalomaniac, huh? At first, I just speed walked. Then I started running. Running toward the home I'd been raised in. 30 meters to go. 20 meters. 10 meters. 0 meters. And when I looked, the house I knew was gone. Was gone. How the fuck did I know?
あれ？
The name on the door plate was wrong. It wasn't Nishijo. In fact, the entire shape of the house was wrong. It was far newer and nicer than the home I'd lived in. I looked around. I wondered if I'd mistaken one of the neighboring houses for mine. But I hadn't. Actually, none of the surrounding scenery lined up with my memories. I considered that maybe I'd gotten lost or taken the wrong alley, but there was no way that could have happened. I'd recognized the entire route until now. I knew for a fact I remembered the route. But my home wasn't at the end of it.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
I was right. I was actually right. Her voice a whisper, Rimi said something nonsensical. Ignoring what she'd said, I glanced at the various houses around me. In this place well rooted in my memories. In this place I couldn't seem to recognize. Houses that should have been there were nowhere to be seen. Houses that shouldn't have been there were all I could see. The gap, the disparity between what I knew in my memories and the real scenery surrounding me was getting wider and wider.
ずれてなんかない。だったら僕は何なの？
ギガロマニアックスの妄想によって作られた人間かな。
バカらしい。僕にはちゃんと記憶があるんだ。中学の頃の細かい記憶は思い出せないけど、忘れちゃっただけで。
あなたが生まれたのは1年半前なの。
A year and a half ago. That would have been just when I started high school.
だったら僕は1歳半の赤ん坊っていうことじゃないか。バブ言ってなくちゃおかしい。
タクは生まれた瞬間からタクだった。
君がその目で見たって言いたいの？確かに僕らは1年半前から友達だったらしいね。僕は覚えてないけど。
私とあなたが会ったのは1ヶ月前。貼り付けの現場。私はもともと水泳の生徒じゃないから。そろそろ行かなきゃ。
行くってどこへ？
ナナちゃんをさらった誘拐犯のところ。決着つけなくちゃいけないの。ナナちゃんのことも他のことも。このままだとタクも守りきれないし。
そんなの無責任だ。僕にここまでひどいこと言っておいて逃げるの？
Rimi started inching away from me. One step, then another. Slowly, she distanced herself.
戻ってくるからタクは部屋にいて。そしたらまた一緒にいろいろ楽しいお話ししよう。あなたはあそこにいてもいいんだよ。
Not really. It's not okay at all. It's about as far from okay as it can really get. Let's be real here.
メワとそしてのぞみグループ G レートに関係してると思われるのはその2つか。
転生振興会も叩けば埃が出てきそうね。もともとあまりいい噂は聞かないし。
Sipping some of her tea, Momose shrugged her shoulders.
パンちゃんには呆れるわ。本来の仕事をほったらかしにして こんなことを調べてたなんて。
元はといえばももちゃんが G レートのことを教えてくれたのがいけないんだぜ。
そうだけど、それで捜査本部から外されちゃったら世話ないわ。本当に不器用なんだから、あんたって人は。
Those words were neither those of astonishment nor of condemnation, but rather a fairly roundabout way of praising him. Mimose, despite her words, acknowledged Bond in his pursuits.
おっと電話だ。おい、大丈夫なのか。
先輩、自分は英知と。
スワ、おい、スワ。
At the hospital? No matter how much Bond called out to him, there was no response from the other end of the call. With a click of his tongue, Bond hung up. But Mose and Yu were looking at Bond with intense concern.
スワちゃんに何かあったの？
Bond stood up, then lightly slapped his cheeks twice.
スワが人質に取られた。どうやら AH 東京総合病院にいるみてえだ。
まさか名和と？
ああ、わかんないが、このままじゃまずい気がする。
応援を頼んだ方がいいわ。
You really
大事にした
should.
らそれこそスワの命はねえよ。俺一人で様子を見てくる。
Have a sniper handy at least. At least they can stay hidden and from a distance. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Chaos Head Noah. So, I've been thinking about all the big revelations regarding Takumi on and off since our last episode, and I thought I had some kind of possible contradiction in regards to, well, if Takumi is a walking delusion come to life, then how could the entire world see him if the phenomena that we've been seeing throughout Shibuya is largely contained within Shibuya, where certain people, in this case Gigalomaniacs, can have their delusions become manifestations and alter reality for everybody living within it, with the obvious exception of the Gigalomaniacs themselves being able to perceive the changes. But then I thought about it a little bit, and then I realized, oh wait, Shibuya is, even though the GE rates are definitely higher in this part of the world compared to other parts of it, Shibuya is still a part of the world, and well, whatever changes occur in Shibuya being a part of the world, well, anyone who happens to be in or out of Shibuya who has some means of being able to perceive something, or at least not something, but parts of Shibuya, well, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I think I thought I had something in regards to that, but I didn't, because everybody that Takumi has interacted with that isn't a Gigalomaniac, to my knowledge, can see him just fine. So I would assume the same would be true if he were to interact with literally anybody else in the world. Just because he's not a real person doesn't mean that real people can't perceive him. Because, well, given what we know about how delusions work in Shibuya, a normie is not going to be able to really perceive him as something that doesn't exist. Especially if if in this case a person just shows up out of the blue right in front of them. Every single person that isn't a Gigalomaniac is going to think that person there's nothing out of the ordinary about that person, just like they wouldn't think anything out of the ordinary if a flower bed just appeared out of nowhere where there wasn't one originally, because them not being Gigalomaniacs, they're not going to really be able to perceive that alteration to their reality. Even if you were to be broadcasted on live television, like what happened during the 107 incident, every single normal human being would be able to perceive Takumi, regardless of whether he's real or not. And I feel like I'm kind of just repeating myself at this point. But bottom line... Oh, shit. Whatever, I can just read the backlog. Yeah, I can't really think of anything particularly solid to where I could refute Rimi's claims that Takumi isn't a real person. And on a related note, in regards to her claims that Takumi's memories of his childhood aren't actually his own, but they were fabricated. What I want to know is, does Rimi mean that they're fabricated in the sense to where they were completely created whole cloth? Or are they fabricated in the sense to where their memories actually belong to someone else, but they were given to Takumi, i.e., the other Takumi, who apparently is Shogun? Because unless I'm given any reason to believe otherwise, I'm currently going with the idea that Takumi's childhood memories, or at least part of them, I don't know how many of them exactly, but I'm sure at least part of them might actually belong to Shogun. And if that's indeed the case, then I guess depending on how you look at it, Nanami is Takumi's sister, just not the Takumi that we've been controlling up until this point. Again, assuming that my belief, that at least some of those memories are actually, some of Takumi's childhood memories actually belong to Shogun, are true. I don't have any proof that they are at this point. Again, it's just an assumption I'm making. Regardless, I'm definitely interested to see what further information we can glean about the nature of Takumi's existence, whether it be from Rimi herself or anyone else for that matter, who would be in the know as to what the deal is with Takumi, our Takumi. Anyway, through no will of my own, my legs moved in the direction of my base. They were heavy. So heavy, in fact, I wondered if my heels were packed with lead. Except it wasn't just my legs, and I thought I silenced this thing, but guess I didn't. My bad. Actually, I just thought of something. Takumi himself may be a delusion, but who created his base? Or rather, how was his base created? Like, is it like was Nozomi behind that? Because Shogun is under a hospital run by Nozomi and the Church of the Divine Light's care. So he's pretty much being monitored constantly, apparently. And Takumi, though our Takumi, is a delusion. So the police also have and the police also definitely have files on our Takumi as well here. I don't think there's any way that Nozomi couldn't be aware of our Takumi. I'm just curious to know how much. I guess I'm just curious to know who set up our living arrangements. If it isn't Nozomi. I'm assuming it's Nozomi, but if it isn't, then, well, why did nobody create a delusion of me living in a house or something? You know what I mean? Oh, okay, I don't know. I'm not even sure if this is really important to really worry about, to be honest. So I'm just going to continue. But despite how hard it was to move, I kept telling myself that it was proof that my body existed. That I wasn't a delusionary existence. The sun had already set, meaning there was no one in the city to pay any attention to me as I staggered through the streets. Before now, I would push everyone away, telling them not to look at me. I was scared of getting too much attention, of being a laughingstock. But even though I'd done that for so long, right now I just wanted someone, anyone, to look at me. Even the monster? I wanted someone to see me with their eyes. I wanted someone to acknowledge that I was there. That was the Deus Ex Machina I needed. But no one did. If I randomly yelled out something, I'd probably get looks of disdain, but I didn't have the willpower to go through with that. Within my sweaty hand was my cell phone, the one I'd gone out to buy with Nanami. I only had 4 numbers registered on it. Rimi's cell phone, Nanami's cell phone, Misumi-kun's cell phone, and a number from my parents' house. I tried desperately to think of a way to prove I wasn't fake with just those 4 phone numbers.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
No. I wasn't a delusionary existence. I was real. I was Nishijo Takumi. I was 17 years old. I was a second year at Sume Academy. I was in a family of 4. I was...
助けて。僕を証明して。
My teeth were chattering. A clearly audible clacking sound. I wasn't cold whatsoever, and yet I trembled all the same.
助けてよ。
From the 4 numbers I had, I chose Misumi-kun's.
はい。
ミス。
ダークだろ。どうしたんだ。リミとうまいこと言ったか。ちゃんと童貞卒業できたんだろうな。感謝しろよ。気を使って2人にしてやったんだからよ。
Misumi-kun was the same as ever. That at least brought me some relief. He did know me. He recognized me as Nishijo Takumi. So I wasn't a delusionary existence. Rimi had just been lying. I knew it. Remember what Sena explained to you about delusions, Takumi? About how ordinary people would be fooled into thinking that something that didn't exist prior it's just what I was saying earlier. So yeah, unless the Gigalomaniac in question was around to see you been born, so to speak, they would have no way of knowing that you were a fake human. And yet Rimi is aware, so I guess that would pretty much imply that she was at least aware of your birth, if not present.
そういえば、ついさっき美奈子から言われたんだけどよ。
美奈子。
ああ、俺の女。で、美奈子が言うんだよ。ここ1ヶ月ぐらい、日常と急に仲良くなったけど、なんでって。こいつ何言ってんだって最初は思ったんだけど、そもそも俺、普通だったらお前みたいなやつとは絶対関わろうとしねえんだよな。
Yeah, I can believe it.
リミを通して知り合ったってのは、なんとなく記憶にあるんだけどよ。細かいことはなぜか思い出せねえんだよな。
You're not really helping You're not really helping assuage Takumi's fears that he's a delusional person, Misumi. Just saying. What you're saying is not helping anything on that front at all. It was the same. It was the same situation I'd experienced earlier. Stop it. I don't want this. Don't say anything else, please. You could have just talked about girls like you always do. So why, today of all days, did you have to?
お前さ、いつ俺とダチになったんだっけ?
I got too freaked out, so I instantly hung up. I felt like I was about to cry, yet no tears came. It simply felt like my heart was being torn to shreds. Next, I decided to try calling home. Who is home exactly? A control test group of Nozomi? Are they basically just attendants like Seina's mother had when she was put through that experiment? That'd be my guess. Next, I decided to try calling home. Despite how hard my fingers were trembling, I somehow managed to select the number and press the call button. Nami had registered this one. Oh, that's true. I hadn't put it in myself, so there was no doubt the call would go through. Considering what time it was, would my dad be home? Had my mom left already? Was Nami there? Even if it did connect, what would I even say? Hey, I'm your son, right? They would probably think I was screwing with them, that I was being stupid. And in truth, it was a stupid question. What if they said no? What if they said our son Takumi is eating dinner with his sister in the living room? What if the phone call that was supposed to prove I was real actually did the exact opposite? What if they asked, "Who are you?" As the negative thoughts continued to swell up on my mind, I grew more and more afraid. I didn't want to know the outcome. I was really scared, and I couldn't control it. I felt like I was about to go insane. My breathing grew ragged. I could barely breathe anymore. Right then, the call connected. With the phone next to my ear, I prepared myself.
あなたがおかけになった電話番号は現在使われておりません。番号をご確認の上、もう一度おかけ直しください。
Well, isn't that interesting? The number is now disconnected. Why, though? He said he reminded us that Nanami was the one that put that number in. Unless Nanami is also under the supervision of some kind of Nozomi control group, and she isn't aware of it or something. Which I guess is possible, thinking about it now, but unless it's something like that, then the only other reason I could think as to why her parents' number has been disconnected might have something to do with Darth Spider targeting them, and by extension Nanami. Because come to think of it, Takumi never once actually called his parents after that whole incident at the 107, did he? I can't remember if he did or not. Yeah, I can't remember for sure if he did or not. But if he didn't, then well, even if he did, and he did manage to get in touch with them, still doesn't really answer the question. It still wouldn't really explain necessarily why the call's not connecting now, why the number has been disconnected. Unless it's either the first scenario where, well, where the family I've been in touch with is actually some kind of Nozomi experimental control group, or something happened to Nanami's family since the last time I spoke to them. Which then begs the question, okay, what happened to them? But yeah, this isn't really helping matters either, is it? On Takumi. No one would prove that I was me. There was no one that could. I wanted to die. Well, we have Nanami left, but given some of the phone calls that we've had with, given the last phone call that we supposedly got from her, she might be in danger still. Raising my head, I noticed Yamanote Dori in front of me, with lots of cars coming and going. My delusion triggers every time I trigger one of them. Takes away from Shogun's life force, right? I believe that's what Rimi told me. So, should I trigger one? Should I trigger any more from this point? Does it really matter if I do or not? Whether it does matter or not, I guess I'll find out the hard way soon enough. Maybe it was for the best that I died. There was no value in being a fake being alive. I was worthless. I disagree with you there, buddy. Even if you yourself are fake, the emotions that you stir in people certainly are not. You do have some value. Even more than what I just stated. You just gotta stop and realize it. Which I know is kind of hard, is saying a lot given present circumstances. But still. Even if a monster did try and live in this world, they just end up being persecuted. I had neither hopes nor dreams. My existence itself was repulsive to people. I wanted to be freed from all of this. If I died, I'd be free. After all, there'd be no more need to think. There'd be nothing more to suffer from. Fuck it, I'm just gonna go without a delusion this time. I'm a little too spooked right now to really go through with it. There'd be no one to laugh at me. There'd be no one to betray me. I wanted nothingness. I brought my heavy legs one step forward. In this place free of traffic lights, I staggered onto the road. I had a feeling that salvation awaited me there. A glaring brightness from a pair of headlights. The discordant noise of a car horn. The unnerving sound of squealing tires. Come on, kill me. Kill this fake me. This unsightly monster. Kill me. But no matter how long I waited, the impact never came. I opened my eyes. A car was stopped right in front of me. I was still standing on the road on my own 2 feet. The driver got out and started shouting at me about something. He shoved me as he kept on screaming. Why? I broke down crying then and there.
どうして引き殺してくれないんだ。
Why won't anyone save me? Why won't anyone release me? Was the fake not even worth killing? Really wish I could offer you some in-person moral support, Takumi. I really do. As Sakihara Rimi walked beneath the Shibuya Station underpass, she took out her cell phone. She had walked straight here right after parting ways with Takumi. She then selected a number registered in her address book as Nana-chan and placed a call. They picked up the very next moment. Nana-chan as in Nanami?
私、実はちょっとした報告があります。ナナちゃんをこれから助けに行こうと思って。
Rimi had an idea of where Nanami was being held, as well as who had abducted her. A theory she had only come to, because she had been in a similar situation herself once before. It was a past she wanted to forget, but it was one she was ready to confront in order to rescue Nanami, no matter how steeped in darkness those memories may be. The reaction of whom she had called was exactly as Rimi had predicted, leading her to inevitably start laughing.
私って信用されてないな。平気だってば。
Both her voice and her expression were cheerful. Not an ounce of the grim resolve she carried could be felt. To an outside observer, it would simply look as if she was having a fun, engaging conversation.
昔の話だしね。そもそも私の感情とナナちゃんを助けることとどっちを優先させるかなんて決まりきってることだよ。言ったでしょ。私はあなたの力になりたいって。それに特には関わらせたくないの。
As she said that, Rimi's expression clouded over.
ねえ、ちょっとだけ語っちゃっていいかな。タクにね、いろいろひどいこと言っちゃったんだ。しかもそんなことしておいてすごく自分勝手なんだけど、私彼と一緒に過ごした時間はとっても楽しかったって思っちゃってるんだ。何もかもが妄想でまみれたまやかしでしかなかったのに。学生生活もあの学校に私やタクが通ってることも、大ちんと友達だっていうことも、 私がタクと一緒にいようとしたことも、タクの存在そのものも。
Little by little, Rimi's pace slowed. Multiple strangers passed her by.
タクってどうしようもないくらい情けなくて、どうしようもないくらい弱くて、きっと普通の女だったら見向きもしないような男の子なんだよ。
Oof. As she spoke, she squeezed the hand she held his cell phone with. Like, I mean, I know she's not wrong in her assessment of him. I mean, even Takumi himself, excuse me, is fully aware of it. Is more than aware of that fact. But still, it still kind of stings to hear it coming out of Rimi's mouth, of all people.
なのに私の心には楽しかったっていう気持ちがあるの。なのに私の心にはもっと一緒にいたかったっていう気持ちがあるの。この気持ちって何なのかな。
Looking up, she saw the neon-lit night sky. No stars were in sight. For an ephemeral moment, excuse me, I'm getting real tongue-twisted there. For an ephemeral moment, Rimi stood beneath it. A slight smile rose to her face when she received a response.
さてと、そろそろ切るね。本当に大丈夫だって。あなたは何も心配しないで。私が全部決着をつけてくるから。ね、匠。
Ah, so she was talking to Shogun. Having lost all of my willpower, before I realized it, I found myself back in my base. I didn't know how I'd gotten here after failing to die at Yamanote Dori. My memory was hazy.
このコンテナって誰がどうやってここまで運んだんだろう。
That's what I wanted to know. It was something I never even thought about until now. But now that I couldn't help but notice how odd it felt. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling encroached upon my mind. The moment I closed the door, the room went pitch black. Leaning against the door, I simply stood there, still as could be. Inside the quiet room, all that could be heard was the sound of my shallow breathing and the hum of the fan inside my PC. I thought that maybe surrounding myself in darkness would make things easier, since I wouldn't have to be conscious of my pitiful self. But it had the exact opposite effect. Unable to see anything, and with nothing else to listen to, Rimi's cruel words from before repeated endlessly in my mind.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
You really make the most interesting mouth noises, Takumi. Truly. I think you're definitely unique among anime/visual novel protags in that department. If somebody told me you were an alien or some kind of weird, some weird furry-looking animal, I'd believe them. My own moans disgusted me more than ever before. I even felt nauseous. I was already a disgusting freak, even before all this. but my very existence itself was warped. I was already beyond saving. I wanted to disappear completely. As I tripped over the trash scattered across the floor, I stumbled my way to the end of the room. I turned the lights on, scaring away the dark. I then grabbed the Saratan figure, post-awakening version. I like that you just put that little bit of information there. That just so happened to enter my line of sight, and sat down in my chair. I brought her close to my chest. She was really small, and she was really hard too. She didn't breathe, nor did she speak. She didn't have the warmth that 3D girl had. Yeah, I'm not really interested in hearing anything that Sarah has to say, being the constant Debbie Downer that she is, so I'm just going to ignore this too. Even if I wasn't, and I would do it even if I wasn't already concerned about triggering delusion triggers at this point, courtesy of what Rimi told me. Because Saratan is just that annoying to me. Despite that, she was all I had left. You still have Nanami, technically. Rimi had left me. I didn't know where Nanami was. Sena had attacked me. Kosupi hadn't protected me. Yua was my enemy. And Nyase was hospitalized. Those were the only girls I knew the names of, and none of them would do anything for me. Reality was harsh. It didn't give a damn about a monster like me. With my trembling hands, I tightened my grip on Saratan. Then tighter. Then tighter. Tight enough to break her. I wanted to disappear completely. If that was how I thought, shouldn't I just act? Ultimately, I was playing the tragic protagonist right now. Even if I was overcome with sorrow, no one was going to empathize with me. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody was here for me. They had all abandoned me. No. I didn't have any real bonds. There was no one in my life I could count as a friend. I didn't even have a family. I was a fake, after all.
オタクばっかり並べてる。
Just shut up and die already. Setting down Saratan, I sluggishly got up from my chair and found a plastic cord lying under my bed. I think you're going to need something thicker if you're going to try to use that as a noose. Just saying. I picked it up, made a ring big enough for my head to fit in, and tied the other end to a pipe on the loft bed. Takumi, I think you're going to need something thicker than just that little cord. You may be laughing at this, but I'm not. Seriously, find something thicker.
死んでやる、死んでやるよ、死んでやるんだからな。
Not that I want you to do it at all, but if you're absolutely dead set, no pun intended, on doing so, at least do it properly. There was no one here to stop me. But of course there wasn't. I was the only one in this room. I managed to secure the plastic cord quite well. Dying is surprisingly easy, I thought to myself. I put my head inside the ring and tightened it around my neck. Normally, you couldn't hang yourself just from a loft bed. It wasn't high enough. But if I kicked my legs out from under me, then height wasn't an issue. What I needed was the resolve to die. You could always just jump off the roof. Now at the end, I looked over at Saratan, who smiled at me from atop my desk. Could you just look at any of your other figures other than Saratan? I'd rather have one of them look at me than her. Staring with Saratan, my wife who's lined up on the shelves would be the ones that would see me to the other side. I was struck by sorrow. Loneliness filled my heart. I felt a twinge in my nose.
さよなら。
Placing all my weight on the cord, I kicked my legs out. This isn't gonna work, Takumi. The cord started strangling me. It was putting immense pressure on my neck. It dug into my flesh. Hard. It hurts. Before I knew it, I was unconsciously trying to relieve the pressure of my fingers. I moved my legs back into place, then went to stand up. But if I did that, I wouldn't be able to die. If I didn't keep all my weight on the cord, I wouldn't be strangled. So I endured it. My throat hurt. Rather than being unable to breathe, the pain of it digging into my neck was the worst part. Hurry up. Hurry up and die already. The suffering continued. It was so immense, I couldn't even pass out. My body swayed aimlessly. Around and around it swayed, my legs kicking up and down. The pipe on my loft bed started creaking. And suddenly, my body lost all support. And I violently crashed to the floor, landing flat on my ass. I was starting to wonder when it would finally snap. The impact I felt in the bones of my pelvis made me writhe in pain. Ooh, that's painful. Especially if you hit your femur bone. At least I think it's the femur bone. I hear it's one of the most painful things that a human body can experience is having your femur bone hit with something fierce, or your tailpipe. As it's, yeah. Told you it wouldn't work, Takumi. Although, to be fair, it didn't work. It didn't work not because you didn't get something thicker, but, well... Actually, wait, yes. What am I saying? Of course that's the reason why. And at the same time, I was desperately sucking in air. As tears welled up in my eyes, I looked at the cord that had been tied to my bed, only to find that it had snapped in two at the center.
なんだよそれ。なんだよそれは。
Of all the times for me to fail, why at the very end when it mattered most? Nah, this isn't just luck, Takumi. You just suck at dying. I knew I was beyond saving. A good-for-nothing loser that hadn't managed to accomplish even a single noteworthy thing in his entire life. Not that I was a person to begin with. But to fail even when trying to die, it was just too much. Why couldn't I die? Even though I wanted to die. Even though I wanted to die. Now that I knew how painful it was to be hanged, I would never have the will nor the courage to attempt it again.
楽に死ぬ方法を誰か教えてよ。
Sleeping pills? ODing on those? That's one way. Seeing my shameless tendency to rely on others rear its head once more, I was hit with a wave of nausea. I really was completely and entirely useless. So, Bon, please tell me you brought more than just a pistol. Human presence quickly faded from the hospital, cloaked in night. Perhaps, after taking in all the life and death during the day, it took this time to regain balance. At this time, the hospital housed neither the scent of life nor the scent of death. Only a quiet emptiness reigned. Bon Yasuji chuckled to himself as he realized the odd nature of his thoughts. Despite the minor self-flagellation, it did indeed feel especially quiet tonight. It was not yet time for the lights to be on, leaving the corridor steeped in darkness. There was not even a single sign of any nurses. So how'd you get in? Oh wait, that's right, the kidnapper. Immediately after stepping foot into the lobby, Bon was hit with a very bad feeling. There was no logical reasoning behind it. It was simply what one might call a detective's gut. My gut is usually right for the most part. In his mind, he believed it to be an oddly superstitious thought, but this may have simply been a way to dismiss the feeling. While the taxi had driven him to the hospital, Bon had attempted to call Suwa's phone numerous times. But each and every one of them had failed, which only served to demonstrate his junior's precarious situation all the more clearly. There was no time to waste. He had to find the place where Suwa was being held within the large hospital and rescue him, all while not being detected by the kidnapper. The linoleum floor would have made his footsteps echo. To avoid this, Bon took off his shoes before entering the lobby. Winter was swiftly approaching at this time of the year, a fact Bon was readily made aware of when the chill from the floor sent shivers up his soles. The sound of the automatic front door echoed throughout the room, followed by the voice of a girl calling out Bon's name. The surprise of seeing her in the lobby put Bon at a loss for words. "What are you doing here?" He hurried toward her in a panic. Beyond her glasses, her eyes threw anxious glances at her surroundings.
おい、なんでついてきたんだ。身を隠せって言っただろうね。
すみません。でも、私。
Bon looked for any signs of Momose, but she was nowhere to be seen. Realizing she had come alone, Bon scratched the top of his head with a concerned expression.
今すぐ戻れ。これは遊びじゃねえんだぞ。
それは分かっているつもりです。
分かってるなら帰るんだ。
I heard a wheelchair. For as he spoke, a creaking sound came from the hallway across the lobby. In the very center of this empty, dark hallway, slowly, an empty wheelchair made its way toward Bon and Yua. Then, at nearly the same exact time, someone could be heard running up the stairs.
とにかくユアちゃんは帰れ。いいな。
Before he had even finished giving his warning, Bon had already started running. He followed the footsteps up the stairs without waiting for Yua's answer. Given his typically languid demeanor, the speed at which Bond moved was like nothing anyone could have ever imagined. As he followed the footsteps, Bond found himself on the roof of the outpatient ward. There were lines of shrubbery installed on the rooftop, forming a garden of sorts. It was the most likely space of healing for the patients there, but regrettably, as the lights were off, Bond could not see what kind of flowers were blooming there. Given the fact Bond was on the roof, it was only natural that the wind would blow strong. With ragged breaths, Bond quickly surveyed his surroundings. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is where the man behind the footsteps must have run, but now, he was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he's above you. Was I led here on purpose? The man had fled while causing sounds that seemed purposeful. Bond could not think of any other reason for him to have done that aside from leading him here. Bond did not have his gun on him. Why don't you have your gun on you? As he was apprehensive about being unarmed, he looked for something that could serve as a weapon, but to no avail. You fool! With a gulp, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead with his fingers. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the garden. Here and there, Bond could see a few hiding spots tucked within the shadows of the benches and shrubbery. He put himself into a fully alert state, one in which he could respond to a potential attacker no matter what the direction they came from. The garden was set up in a circular fashion, with benches placed around it in accordance with its shape. Bond strained his eyes as he looked at each bench in order. And on one of those benches, his eyes landed upon a strange object. Keeping a close look on his surroundings, he slowly approached the bench. And as he got closer to it, its shape was made clear to him. The Darth Spider helmet. It was around the size of a soccer ball. Round and dark. It was a severed human head. Bond, who had investigated countless murder cases involving dismemberment in the past, quickly recalled an image of a photo he had seen once. The bad feeling in his chest grew stronger and stronger. Recognizing the possibility of it being his junior's head, vengeful anger and furious rage toward the perpetrator bubbled up from within. Bond gritted his teeth and drew even closer to the bench. The object did not move a single inch. The wind of the night continued to blow. Then, Bond heard a gunshot. He froze in response to this sudden sound. Normally, the detective would duck and investigate the direction the sound come from, but he was unable to do even that. No. In actuality, you got shot. There was no need for him to do that anymore. Feeling a burning heat in his chest, Bond touched it with his hand. A slippery sensation. Something was flowing out from his body, accompanied by a very particular smell of blood. Only a short moment following the gunshot did Bond's mind begin to register pain within him. He had been shot. The moment he realized this, all strength left his legs. Unable to remain standing, he collapsed to the ground. That hand! I know that fucking hand! And that suit! Suwa! The footsteps from earlier were approaching him. As his vision grew blurry, he desperately looked up at the person drawing near. A dark shadow, with a gun in his hand. A shadow so dark, Bond could not recognize its face.
ああ、
A voice came.
手を引けって言ったのに。
A voice he recognized.
残念っすよ、先輩。
Bond, collapsed in a heap, was met with the ridicule of one man. Suwa Mamoru.
スワがお前が俺を
そうっす。いやー、祝初発砲ってところっすか？
As he laughed into the night, Suwa casually picked up the object from the bench.
ちなみに先輩、やけにこれに注目してたっすけど、そんなに珍しかったんすか？ダーススパイダーのヘルメット。
I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it! You were the one that drew Takumi to 107. You were compromising Bond's investigation right from the very fucking start. Suwa, who had now returned to Bond, held a dark helmet in front of the detective's face with an ostentatious manner.
ざまねえ。
As Bond laughed, his vision grew blurrier and blurrier. Both his arms and legs felt extremely cold. His chest hurt, but not just from the physical pain. He also felt an intense gaze upon him, but he had no more strength to conclude whether it was Suwa's or someone else's. And seeing as how those men that got torn apart and stitched back together had ran into a Darth Spider figure who had them attack Takumi, I think I can take this to mean that you're the new gen killer, aren't you, Suwa? Knowing that his life would only last a few more minutes, Bond forced his growingly heavy body to face upward. With arms and legs outstretched, only the night sky lay above him. I bet you don't even have a girlfriend, do you, Suwa? A sky overcast, with no stars to be seen. But even if there were any left in the sky, Bond had long since lost the ability to see them. After a few coughs, the taste of blood spread through his mouth.
そうお前はバカだ。まだガキでどうしようもないくらいのバカなデカだ。だが俺はお前のこと結構買ってた。
自分は先輩が鬱陶しくてしょうがなかったっすよ。
まあ気持ちはわかる。
Bond's breathing grew increasingly shallow. Only a faint wheezing sound could be heard leaking from his throat. Before long, he would be unable to perceive anything anymore.
何者なんだお前。
With his consciousness fading in and out, Bond spoke one final question. In response, Suwa pointed the muzzle at Bond and gave his reply.
魔法使いっす。
バカが。
Before either of them could realize it, the wind had stopped blowing. The darkness had quickly turned to a place of serenity, and within it, two figures remained frozen still. But that, too, remained only for an ephemeral moment. Suwa's finger, now curled around the trigger, slowly moved inward.
先輩に信仰の救いあれ。
Well, on one hand, my big theory about Suwa was proven correct. So, on one hand, I feel very smug about being validated on that front. But on the other hand, it also really shows to me in retrospect just how fucked I was from the investigation side of things, seeing as how the goddamn killer was a part of the investigation right from the start. And Bond's right. You are a schmuck. A murderous schmuck at that. Anyway, yeah. Looks like Grimm has finally come to do something about your constant pleas, I assume. Maybe. Maybe he's got some telepathy and he sensed your suicidal state of being. So, Grimm, got any news to share with us today? Lol. After all this time, only now you become Chuni? LMAO. Or were you rejected by an IRL girl? More like the IRL girl made reality as I understood it reject me. If that makes any sense. In that case, I've got some good news for you. I knew I could count on you, Mr. News Anchor. If you stay a virgin till 30, you know, Takumi, if you are going to go through killing yourself, could you at least do me the favor of at least allowing me to see what's inside your do not open icon on your desktop before you do? You become a wizard. Well, I definitely failed that challenge. No wizardry for me. That's a pro tip. Speaking of pro tips, apparently there's going to be a festival in about an hour. I don't like it already. It'll be at Shibuya's Scramble Crossing. Jesus, you're annoying. What the fuck? Well, if that's what you want, you should go. You're a celebrity, so you'll be at the center of attention. Maybe you can get someone there to kill you. Turning off my PC, I hugged my knees with my arms.
僕を殺してよ。誰か。
鬼ってば。
Is that the real you, Nanami, or am I just hearing things? In my hand was Saratan, my one and only ally. She's not an ally! She was constantly trying to sabotage us. Little bitch. Perhaps because I've been holding her in my sweaty hands for a while, her slender limbs were all sticky. Let her suffer! And not only that, but her arms had been bent. Break them in two! That voice. It couldn't be. How? There was no way I'd misheard that. Out of every girl that visited my base, there was only one dumbass that would scream outside of it like that. Nanami was here. I was somewhat surprised at how indifferent I felt in response to that fact. I just didn't care. What would her coming here while I was this far gone even do for me? You never know until you open the damn door and let her do her thing. Besides, it wasn't like it was out of the ordinary for Nanami to come here. Hadn't Rimi said she was going to rescue her anyway? The noise was starting to irritate me. Just leave a monster like me alone. Nanami should have been focused on her right hand, not me. Not that I knew what had happened to it. I didn't have it in me to talk to anyone anymore. But she was being too loud, so I forced myself to get up from my chair and head for the door. The door seemed so far away to me, which made me realize I was scared to see her. Are you actually real? Can I just flick your forehead? Just to check real fast? Flick it twice, just to be doubly sure. The second I opened the door, Nami shivered a little, then fell silent. Even though she'd been shouting at the top of her lungs just a few moments ago, she was acting strangely meek now. I was confused. I barely ever seen Nanami act like this. So a thought crossed my mind. Was this Nanami real? Flick her forehead and check, Takumi. I didn't answer. Ignoring her question, I headed back into my room and sat down on the sofa. I once again took hold of my Saratan figure and gripped her tight. So tight, in fact, that my hand hurt slightly. But it didn't matter, because that pain, too, was a delusion. Nanami followed after me, entering the room in silence. Once she came inside, as if she didn't know what to do at that point, she moved aside the magazines scattered across the floor and squatted down. She didn't speak, even though normally she'd have started scolding me the second she got the chance. So what's on your mind? Concerned about me, or what? She looked at a fixed point on the ground as she hugged her knees close. She had a depressed look on her face. A bandage was barely visible beneath the sleeve on her right wrist. I was about to say, if you sit like that, I'll see your panties, but stopped myself. This Nanami had to be a delusion. I was one too, after all. Everything in this world was made up of delusions. Delusions developed only within my mind. Both me and this delusion I was looking at were fake. So if I saw her panties, or even she walked around town buck naked, it made no difference to me whatsoever. Averting my gaze from Nanami, I looked up at the ceiling. With no particular goal in mind, I started counting the rusty spots. I didn't want to look at Nanami. I'd only feel empty if I did. Silence took over. Only the sound of the fan in my PC could be heard throughout the cramped room. Even though every time Nanami came to my base, it turned into my own personal hell, one that was as annoying as could be. I still felt that way. But those memories too might have been delusions.
ねえ、お兄。何か喋ってよ。
A voice devoid of all energy. This couldn't be Nanami. Therefore, she must have been a delusion.
どうして何も言ってくんないの？包帯のこととか気になんないの？
So do you know that I know about the bandage? I concentrate on my task of counting the rusty spots. I don't care. You're a delusion. Even if you were the real one, I'm completely unrelated to you. I'm a delusion, so I'm not related to you by blood.
何か言って。お願いだから。
The sound of rustling cloth rang throughout the quiet room, followed by a ringing in my ears. My head hurt. These too were delusions, though, so I paid them no mind. Whether Nanami was throwing off her clothes, taking off her bandage, or doing something unthinkable, it wouldn't surprise me. I didn't care. This was a delusion, and so was I. Even if there wasn't a concrete line of logic, it was the obvious conclusion to reach. And that was the end of that. Disagree.
ほら、見てよ。
I wasn't going to look. I was too afraid.
青技、だいぶ消えてくれたな。最初はすごく腫れてたんだよ。バスケしてて転んで打撲したんだ。
It was something you got playing basketball? So that call I got, where it sounded like you asking for your hand, that was a fake?
見てもくれないの？ナナってお兄に心配されたこと一度もないな。逆はしょっちゅうなのに。
I didn't want to see anything. I didn't want to think about anything.
ねえ、ナナミ。
Without meeting her eyes, I called out to my sister, or to the girl whose identity I wasn't sure of.
お前が本物でも偽物でもどっちでもいいよ。
Right now, I only wanted one thing.
僕を殺してくれないか。
Oh, come on. You're just gonna leave it right there? Okay, fine. I guess we'll get back to that at some point. Whatever. At the front entrance of AH Tokyo General Hospital, Kusunoki Yua fixed her gaze beyond the automatic door. Having been told by Bond to get out of here now, she had reluctantly complied and went outside. However, in her worry, she could not bring herself to go any farther. Bond had followed the mysterious figure and vanished up the hospital stairs. It had not even been 3 minutes since then, but hoping that Bond had already returned, Yua peeked into the lobby. This was after Bond headed into the hospital alone. Yua had ignored Momose's orders and had followed after him. Also, she could get one step closer to the truth behind her little sister's death, and the true perpetrator. Well, if you had followed him up there, you would have found out, most likely, but you'd probably be dead too. The person that had told Bond to back off over the phone and had abducted Bond's junior, someone who must have been named Suwa-san, was most likely the same one that had killed her sister, Mia. That was the feeling Yua had, and as such, she had been unable to hold back her impulsive emotions. Despite Bond's various warnings about the dangers of involving herself with this case, Yua had come nonetheless. Moreover, it was not as though Yua would be able to achieve anything by coming here. She was nothing more than a powerless high schooler, after all. Somewhere in her mind, Yua hoped that Bond would simply come running gallantly back after apprehending the culprit. If that happened, she would have the opportunity to question them directly. Why did my sister have to die? Well, apparently he had to die for the divine light. Going by Suwa's ramblings. That was the one thing Yua had to ask. Suddenly, Yua felt a gaze upon her. She nervously scanned her surroundings. It had not been 2 hours since the sun had set, yet oddly enough, the hospital's front entrance was eerily quiet. Right next to it was the urgent care entrance, which also served as the entrance for emergencies. And yet, not even there housed any signs of human presence. A train gently ran along its tracks beside the hospital. Hardly any cars passed by the large street in front of it, and there was nary a single passerby. Housed between the sleepless cities of Shibuya and Shinjuku, where Yua was now akin to an abyss of darkness, formed in the interstice of 2 bursts of blinding light. No figure that could conceivably be responsible for the gaze was visible. Holding back her anxiety, Yua placed her hand on her chest and let out a small sigh. Following this, she found herself glancing over at the hospital ward. Oh. There, at the entrance to the hospital ward, stood a single girl. Your sister? The lights were out, rendering the area very dimly lit. And yet, the girl's figure was clearly visible amid the darkness.
Mia-chan.
Without intending to, Yua whispered that name. Her sense of reason told her it was impossible, but nonetheless, she could not keep those words from escaping. The girl was a mirror image of her. A mirror image of her twin sister that was no longer of this world. Moreover, Yua recognized the clothes she was wearing. She knew, almost for a fact, that they were her sister's clothes. The possibility of her perhaps being a ghost filled Yua with fear. Fear that made her hair stand on end. Suddenly, the girl turned and headed for the automatic door marking the entrance to the hospital ward. The moment she grew close enough, the door quietly slid open. It wasn't a ghost. Yua was in shock, but before she could register anything more, she promptly ran after the girl and into the hospital ward. You better not be leading her into danger. Whatever you are. Inside, perhaps due to it being past closing time, it was even quieter than outside. Each time Yua took a step forward, her footsteps echoed forth into the depths of the corridor. It had been just the same in the outpatient ward, but the fact that it was even quieter here made her very uneasy. The girl had disappeared up the stairs. Yua heard the faint sound of laughter coming from ahead. It's like a scene straight from a ghost story. With that on her mind, Yua cautiously made her way up the stairs, step by step. She arrived on the second floor. Glancing around the corridor, she did not see anyone, something she had expected. But just as she was suspecting that it may have been a mere illusion, a girl's laughter sounded from the floor above. That voice, and the sound of its laughter, were identical to what Yua had heard time and time again in the past. Climbing to the third floor and looking down the corridor, Yua saw a girl with the same face as her, standing there. One of the victims of the first New Gen case, the group dive. Her little sister, who should have died 2 months ago. Kusunoki Mia stood right there, with an unmistakable sense of presence.
So.
Yua removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. However, even after putting her glasses back on, she looked to see that Mia was still there.
Mia-chan, nano? Dou omou?
A voice so clear, it could never be an illusion. An intrepid smile on her face. That laughter in the air. It was exactly the same as Yua remembered from her sister. Mia had always acted this very same way. In order for her to be the wrongdoer in the eyes of others, she had laughed like that all the time.
Mia-chan. 本当に私がミアであなたがユアだと思う？どういうこと？もし逆だったら、あなたはミア、死んだのはユア、殺したのはあなた。
What?
何を言っているの？あなたは親に愛される姉が疎ましくてネットで殺人を依頼したのよ。しかも 自殺に見せかけるように見ず知らずの4人も一緒に飛び降りさせた。あなたは姉になりすまして妹の死を悲しみ、涙を流しているふりをしながら、これまで姉が独占していた親の愛を手に入れて、心の中ではほくそ笑んでいる。違うわ。私はユアよ。誰がそれを証明するの？私はユアのはず。でも確信が持てない。私を私だと証明するものって何？顔？名前？記憶？自分のことなのに。自分で自分を証明するなんて不可能よ。私がミヤだっていう可能性もあるの。
I'm just now remembering that at one point you were looking up dissociative identity disorder earlier on in the story, weren't you? Is this what this is? Are you the person who's actually suffering from DID, and that this person you're speaking to now, this Mia figure, is an alternate personality of yours?
あなたはいろいろと調べていたじゃない。多重人格、浮遊病、記憶捏造、それから妄想。
The concepts Yua herself had been looking into prior to now show just how real the ambiguity of memories, or perhaps recollections, truly was. She didn't know, nor understand herself anymore. What was she? Yua cradled her head as she shook it in denial.
あなたは誰？
Was she Yua, who'd always played the good child and was automatically loved and cherished by her parents? Was she Mia, who had always played the bad child and was actively hated by her parents? The child who, despite her actions being her own, often cast her sister glares of jealousy and hatred?
さあ、私も。
Mia, or perhaps possibly Yua, guided Yua, or possibly Mia, as she walked down the corridor soundlessly.
私と同じ目に遭いなさい。
Yua and Mia, identical twins, faces a mirror image of one another, and the boundary that served to differentiate the two was growing more and more blurred. If she suffers from DID, then did she hallucinate her other personality having a separate body to her own? Because I'm trying to think, based on what we know of her backstory, what she told us about Mia. I don't remember her saying anything about her parents and how she treated and how they treated the two of them. That could have hinted that there was something odd about. Wait. After Mia supposedly died, after the group dive, suddenly Yua's parents started acting as though Yua never had another sister, that she was an only child. Is that supposed to have been a clue? Was that supposed to have been a clue? That Mia never actually existed at all and there was only Yua? And that it's Yua's recollection of Mia that's incorrect? Please, Yua, Mia, somebody, enlighten me. I'm very curious to know if I'm on the right track with this. Two enormous boxes stood tall within the darkness. And yet, compared to the nearby Shinjuku skyscrapers, they were akin to a small child looking up at their parents. The hospital roof. That was where Yua found herself, having been led there by Mia. A section of the towering fence had been torn open just wide enough to allow a person to fit through it. Whether this was an intentional effort, none could say. Mia and Yua, after moving through the torn section to the other side of the fence, both now stood on the edge of the roof. Before them, the outpatient ward. As that location was lower than the hospital ward, the entire breadth of the roof garden was visible to them. However, the lights were still turned off, so even if there were people there, Yua would be unable to know. The wind blew strongly on the rooftop. The gale made Yua's and Mia's soft hair flutter, along with the hems of their clothes.
私たちはもともと一つだったんだから。また戻るだけ。一歩を踏み出せば、あなたは私になる。
Yua, her eyes vacant of all light, mechanically whispered those emotionless words. Spreading her arms to maintain her balance, she endured the upward rising wind. Beside her, Mia, arms spread just as Yua's were, looked at her sister and smiled.
耐える必要なんてないよ。あなたは私の痛みを知らなくちゃならない。さあ、飛んで。そうすれば、私もあなたも同じ痛みを共有するわ。私はどっちなの？私？あなた？それを聞いても意味はないわ。どっちにしたって。あなたは飛ぶ。
All hesitation left within Yua disappeared. And so, moving her foot forward, she... A gunshot tore through the dark night. And with a start, Yua came to her senses. Realizing where she was, she let out a frightful scream. The sheer height of where she stood immediately disoriented her, making her lose her balance. She very nearly fell, but in her desperation, she shot her hand toward the fence behind her and grabbed onto it. Because of this, she successfully managed to avoid being met with a terrible fate. The gunshot had come from the roof of the outpatient ward, leading her to look at it once more. In a circular clearing on the roof garden, she had managed to spot multiple figures. There were two of them. One was on the ground, and the other stood beside them.
Bansan.
Had the detective shot someone? Or had the detective been shot by someone?
何をしてるの？どうして私と同じ痛みを味わおうとしないの？そんなの卑怯よ。ずるいわ。みやちゃん。違うわ。私はユアよ。ユアは私。ミヤはあなた。あなたは一体何なの？私はあなたの望んだもの。あなたは私の望んだもの。
Mia reached for her sister. Placing her hands around Yua's neck, she began to strangle her. You're a delusion, aren't you? Yua felt a strong pressure on her throat. She could no longer breathe. Mia was no ghost. She definitely had a body of flesh and blood, and now she was strangling Yua with it.
願い死んでよ。今日ぐらい私のお願いを聞いて。いつも我慢してきたんだから。
Yua's vision grew crimson. She reached her hands out into the air in front of her, but found herself unable to grasp anything. I'm going to die. Awash with the most extreme dread, using her whole body, Yua called upon strength she didn't even know she had, as she tried desperately to break free from Mia's grasp. But Mia was too strong. Yua was unable to move her even a single inch. Even Yua's thoughts were dyed crimson. It felt as though her consciousness was being coated in a layer of viscous blood. In a desperate frenzy, she shook her head so violently, her glasses fell from her face. And from that point onward, to an outside observer, Yua and Mia were no longer distinguishable. It did not matter who killed whom. The result was arbitrary. If Yua died, all Mia would have to do was become Yua. If Mia died, all Yua would have to do was become Mia. Feelings of resignation steadily spread throughout Yua's heart. Before her eyes was Mia's, or possibly Yua's, face, seeping with anger. Not wanting to see such a sight, she looked away. And what vaulted into her red field of view was the shrubbery. The shrubbery and the flowers adorning the roof garden. Hey! That looks like a D-sword! In her mind, Yua felt that there was a shadow among those flowers, the likes of which she had never seen before. Though perhaps it was simply an illusion, she had dropped her glasses in the struggle after all. However, no longer able to breathe, and suffering from so much pain, a faint sense of peace gradually rose from within her. Despite her thoughts of simply surrendering herself and peacefully passing on, her instinctive desire not to die denied her that peace. It made her Yua extend her hand toward that desperate shadow. Her distance from the shrubbery was about 2 meters. How she was now, there was no way she would reach it, even if she were to extend her hand. And yet, her fingertips touched something hard and cold. She then grasped it, almost completely unconsciously. The second she did so, Kusunoki Yua's consciousness, right on the verge of fading, instantly became clear, as though the haze had been dispelled from her mind. There was an invisible, yet fierce impact. Her sister, rained upon by showering red lights akin to petals, was blown away. Languidly standing up as she gasped for air, Yua looked at what she was holding, and instantly doubted her eyes. It was a sword. All too sharp like the wit shown by the other. All too elegant like the glasses worn by one. All too vigorous. All too immaculate. All too profound, its nature veiled. All too delicate, its frame easy to fracture. And so beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. And so beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. The object, now in her hands. It reminded you of Ayaste's sword that she had seen at the overpass, and of the sword that Bon had spoken of, Seina's.
今のは何？
Mia, after being blown away by the mysterious impact, had been buried in the shrubbery. As she held her head, she freed herself from it and crawled back to her feet.
あなたは何をしたの？私はミヤちゃん。私やっとわかったわ。どうしてここまで一生懸命あなたの死の真相を調べていたのか。私を殺そうとしたの？私はまた殺されるところだったの？また？結局私はあなたが怖かったのよ。当てつけに死なれたと思ったの。あなたがわからなかったの。あなたが死んだ理由は私のせいじゃないって証明して安心したかった。最低のお姉ちゃんね。どうして死んでくれないのよ。
She could no longer get through to her. Their two selves, once together in the beginning, had now diverged completely, never to return to one again. Mia reached to grab her once more. Reminded of the pain she had experienced before, Yua's trembles of dread returned, leading her to brandish her sword. It carved a sharp trail, and then cut the ghost in half. Mia's movements came to a halt, and with a look of shock on her face, she traced the wound of gouged flesh with her hand, beginning from the left side of her torso and ending all the way at her right shoulder. No blood sprang forth.
ミヤちゃんは2ヶ月前に死にました。それならあなたは誰なんですか？
Countless particles, large enough to be seen by the naked eye, came flowing out from within Mia. Her body, now enveloped in bubbles, gradually collapsed to the ground as her silhouette faded and faded. It was now transforming into something else. Yua, with feelings of incredulity, saw what it was. After a moment's wait, a man of an impressively large physique appeared in Mia's place. He was wearing a denim shirt, jeans, and a rucksack on his back. Yua had never seen the man before.
誰？あなた誰？どうしてミヤちゃんの姿に？どうやって？
Yua backed away in confusion, still holding her D-sword. The man was similarly bewildered. He had likely not predicted that he would have been uncovered, leaving him to act in a very clearly frantic manner.
お前こそなんでまさかこのガキギガロマニアックスか聞いてないぞくそどうしたら
And then, ignoring gravity itself, it came flying in, its path almost horizontal. By the time the man looked behind him, it had already perforated the rucksack on his back. And from that same rucksack, a pale flash of light surged. The man, as though he had just received an electric shock, stiffened up like a pole. His eyes shot open wide, and only a moment later, he lost consciousness, falling face first to the ground. He foamed at the mouth, and every so often his body would twitch. The object that had pierced the rucksack. Was a sword, quite like the one you obtained just a moment ago, with beautiful curves adorning its very edge. Ayase's?
これ
Yua remembered the sword. She had seen it once before. A single presence approached her. Yua raised her head. Someone then emerged from the darkness.
何事かと思ったらこんな騒ぎになっていたの。岸本さん。
Without a change in her expression, Ayase glanced at the sword Yua held in her hands.
感じる大いなる意志を。私がこの病院に居続けた意味はこういうことだったんだ。
Yua had sunk into the ground, dumbfounded. Ayase picked up the glasses that had fallen near her, crouched down in front of Yua, and peered at the girl's face. Then, with her slender fingers, she brushed Yua's hair aside and gently put her glasses back in place.
君もグラジオールの黒騎士だったのね。
And with that, Ayase gave a faint, transient smile.
僕を殺してくれないか。
Well, I wish I could say I'm not surprised. I'm surprised to see that Yua is also a Gigalomaniac, but somehow I'm just not. Because honestly, it seems to be like almost every major character that I know, like half of every major character in this game seems to be a Gigalomaniac of some kind. So, I mean, considering the prominent role that Yua had earlier on in the story, I guess some part of me just can't help but not be surprised. I'm not sure I really know how to explain it. It's just, other than just it being somehow just being a feeling I had. But now that we know that she is, what does that mean for us? Nanami's face stiffened. But shortly after that, she put on a clearly forced smile.
お兄、つまんない冗談やめなよ。
That reaction wasn't like her. Normally, she wouldn't just laugh it off. Normally, she'd angrily yell, "Don't say that, you dumb jerk." Then spend the next few minutes reprimanding me. Well, not that it mattered. I didn't care. If she wouldn't kill me, I had no more business with this Nanami. She could just up and vanish for all I cared. I locked eyes with Seiratan. If only Seiratan was in the third dimension, she would have gladly granted my wish. If I was going to be born to delusionary existence anyway, at least let me be born in the second dimension.
ねえ、そんな冗談は置いといて、その話があるんだ。
Oh, what?
あのね、お兄にもらったバングル、なくしちゃったの。どうせ適当に扱ってたんだろうとか言わないでね。ナナ、そんなことしてないもん。本当に大切にしてたもん。なのに、どこでなくしたのかもわかんなくて。
What? You treasured it? Seriously? Incredible. Genuinely fucking incredible. Comedy gold, really. Besides, I gave it to you, didn't I? So it's worthless anyway. I think she disagrees. Because you were the one that gave it to her.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
Besides, the fact that I'd given Nanami the bangle in of itself was suspicious. It could have been a delusion too, for all I knew. That was why nothing in this world was worth anything. Each and everything in my memories was worthless.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄が初めてくれたプレゼントだったのにな。なんでなくしちゃったりしたんだろう。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄、聞いてる？
Not really.
僕は妄想じゃない。
I'm off in my own little world right now.
僕は妄想じゃない。
My own delusional world of nothingness, where nothing matters, has ever mattered or ever will matter, because I'm not real, and neither are you, and neither is that fridge, and neither is the junk on the floor, and most certainly, neither is Saratan, and thank God for that last one.
お兄はどうしていつもそうなの？
Now, Nanami, he's not always this level bad. Her head hung low, and her fist clenched tight. Nanami let out a faint whisper.
たまにはお兄ちゃんらしく頼りがいのあるとこ見せてよ。
What now? If you're here to criticize me, you're wasting your time. After all, I'm a delusionary existence.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
All I did was stare blankly at Saratan's smile. There was no reason to listen to Nanami. After all, I was just a delusionary existence.
今までずっとナナがしっかりしなきゃって思って頑張ってきたけど、でもね、やっぱりナナだってたまには誰かに甘えたいよ。誰かにじゃなくてお兄に甘えたいよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
Snap out of it already!
だってお兄はナナのお兄なんだから。お兄に頼りたいって思うことナナにもあるんだよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
そりゃいつもああしろこうしろ言われてお兄も嫌だろうけど、それはお兄がだらしないから仕方なく。言いたいことはそういうことじゃなくて。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
ナナだっていろいろ愚痴を聞いてもらいたい時とか泣きたい時とかあるんだよ。
I can definitely understand that.
お兄に優しくしてもらいたい時とかあるんだよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
ねえお兄、ナナの話聞いてよ。ナナ、今すごく悲しいんだよ。お兄にもらった大切なバングルなくなっちゃって、声出して泣きたいくらい悲しくて辛くて、お兄に抱きしめてほしいのに
If your goal is to rip my heart in two and leave me a depressed mess for the rest of the night, Nanami, you're succeeding.
お兄に頭撫でて慰めてほしいのに。ねえ、お兄、今日だけはナナのわがまま受け止めてよ。
Oh god, that face. I hate it. It's so sad and cute all at once. Sad and cute shouldn't mix, and yet here it is, right in front of me. And in the current context and when where it's being used just makes it worse. Raising my head in a daze, I saw Nanami crying. She was hanging her head low, and while she was trying her best to hold them in, tears ran down her pained face all the same. Well, it looks like something interesting is about to happen here too, but I think I'm gonna just go right ahead and end things here, and we'll save it for next time. Once again, a lot of shit happened in this episode. The obvious big thing, with the two big things being, well, Yua turning out to be a Gigalomaniac, and awakening as such, and perhaps most importantly for me personally, the fact that my theory about Suwa being the traitor, the murderous traitor, the maniacal traitor, the serial killing traitor, was right all along. And that I wasn't right to start being suspicious of him the minute I heard his cell phone ringtone. Getting a call from a girlfriend which I doubt even exists. Because he's just that much of a schmuck. Seriously, fuck Suwa. And he killed Bond too. I rather liked the guy. But yeah, it also in turn just ends up making yeah. The killer being part of the investigation, why the investigation didn't really seem to be making any serious headway. It's because the killer was a part of it, and was thus in a position to manipulate the investigation as he pleased. So, all that now makes sense. That and the crew fiction killing and how it was reported within the police. I bet that was all his doing too. He tampered with the scene. He tampered with the corpse. I guess the only question I have now is whether or not he too is a Gigalomaniac. Because he was aware he was aware of Takumi intervening to save Ayase in the school courtyard using that flower bed. Even though to a normal human, they shouldn't have been able to perceive the change the change in reality right as it happened, and yet he somehow knew it. So either someone who was a Gigalomaniac or was otherwise somehow able to observe that change told him, and he just acted on the information, or he happened to be present close to the scene itself and witnessed Takumi manifest the flower bed firsthand. Which would then mean that he has to be a Gigalomaniac himself to have been able to have seen that. So yeah, the question is, did he know about all of that and try to draw Takumi out the way he did because he himself saw Takumi do it? Or did someone else tell him and he just acted on the information? Me knowing the answer to that question will also in turn help me figure out whether he's a Gigalomaniac too. And I'm hoping I can learn it sooner rather than later. So, with all that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed this latest episode of Chaos Head Noah. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time. Take care.